She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Matt, this dinner's just for people with real jobs." Then she laughed, short and sharp, like she was telling me an inside joke about my own life, like I was supposed to chuckle along and pretend it didn't hit like a brick. I stood there holding a bottle of Merlot I picked out just for her. Well, okay, for Mom too, because she'd always say that Jessica liked anything with a hint of blackberry. But right then, the bottle felt like a goddamn joke, a prop in some family sitcom where I played the sad, washed-up brother with too many dreams and not enough paychecks. The worst part wasn't what she said, though. It was the way she didn't hesitate. She didn't stutter or glance away, or even try to pat it with a soft insult. She meant it. Jessica, my baby sister, who used to beg me to teach her how to ride a bike and cried the first time I went away to college, looked me in the face and decided I didn't qualify as real. She stood there in her tight blazer, heels clicking like punctuation marks on our tiled kitchen floor, and just dismissed me. Just like that. No fight, no guilt, no hesitation. "You're not mad, right?" she added, like that was supposed to make it better. Like I should be fine missing out on the one night Mom had been planning for 3 damn weeks. Like I didn't already feel out of place at every family thing we did lately, with her corporate boyfriend and all their friends sipping cocktails and talking about equity bonuses and quarterly wins while I nursed a beer and pretended not to care. I wanted to say something sharp, something she'd remember, but the words got stuck somewhere between my stomach and my throat. So I just smiled like a damn idiot and said, "Nah, don't worry about it," and held out the bottle like it wasn't burning in my hand. She took it with one hand, her phone in the other, barely looking up before turning to check some message. And just like that, I wasn't invited anymore. I didn't tell Mom. I let her believe I was too busy with a project to come. Because that's easier, right? Telling your 62-year-old mother that you finally got a shot at making something real of yourself sounds better than saying, "Your daughter doesn't think I'm good enough for chicken piccata and boxed cake." And she sounded so excited when she called. I couldn't kill that. Not again. Back in my apartment that night, this tiny one-bedroom above a bakery that always smelled like burnt sugar after 10, I sat down in front of my laptop with an open tab of Reddit, one cold pizza slice, and a code editor that had been staring at me like an unpaid bill. I'd been grinding on this app for 6 months straight, tweaking algorithms, writing pitch decks, fixing crashes that kept popping up like whack-a-moles. No one really believed in it except me and my buddy Ben, and even he thought I should have taken that contract job last November. But sitting there, surrounded by nothing but code and old takeout, I felt something familiar creep in. That cold, bitter voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like my father, always saying, "You've got your head in the clouds, kid." That voice got louder when Jessica started at her law firm and the family group chat blew up with photos of her in tailored suits shaking hands with people who actually mattered. I was the guy with half-finished apps and freelance gigs that paid just enough to stay afloat, but never enough to impress anyone at Thanksgiving. Still, I opened the app again, tweaked a couple of things on the back end, added a new user filter I'd been thinking about for weeks. I didn't even realize how late it got until I looked up and saw the screen had gone blurry, my eyes burning like I'd just been pepper sprayed. The silence in the apartment was thick, but not peaceful. The kind that makes you aware of your own breathing. Sometimes I wonder when exactly my sister stopped taking me seriously. Was it after my 3rd job in 2 years? Was it the year I missed Christmas because I was working on a startup that fizzled out like a cheap firecracker? Or maybe it was always there, building quietly under her carefully curated success, until one day she just decided I wasn't part of her image anymore. What stung more than anything was that I used to be her hero. She used to brag about me at school. "My brother builds video games," or "Matt knows how to fix computers." But somewhere along the way, the shine wore off. And in its place, there was this smug little lawyer with a flawless Instagram life and a Rolodex full of people who probably never wore the same outfit twice. I know I shouldn't care. I know that. But damn if it didn't hit different standing in our mother's kitchen, being told, literally told, that I didn't count. And so I stayed in. I didn't crash the dinner or call her out. I didn't show up with the bottle and make a scene. I just stayed in, alone with my laptop and my stupid little app that maybe 10 people used on a good day. I figured I'd kill a few hours debugging, maybe fix the glitch in the onboarding flow, and then crash out around 2 in the morning like usual. I had no idea that in a few hours, everything would change. But right then, in that moment, all I knew was this: I wasn't invited. Not because I was rude. Not because we had a fight. But because, according to my own sister, I didn't have a real job. And that hit harder than anything I could ever put into code. That night, the apartment felt colder than usual, not physically, not really, but in the way empty rooms sometimes feel like they're staring back at you, whispering things you're trying your damnedest not to hear. I didn't bother turning on the TV, didn't answer Ben's text about grabbing a beer either, and I sure as hell didn't look at any of the pictures Jessica posted on Instagram from her birthday dinner. The ones I knew were coming. The ones I knew would have smiling faces, clinking glasses, and captions like "grateful for my people" or "only real ones at this table tonight." Yeah, I could already feel the sting before I even saw them, so I just stayed away, even though every part of me wanted to scroll through and punish myself on purpose. Instead, I opened up my laptop and loaded the latest build of the app, hoping that maybe if I worked long enough, hard enough, deep enough into the code, I could forget what it felt like to be treated like an embarrassment by the one person who used to hang on my every word. The cursor blinked at me, smug little bastard, like it was waiting to see if I had it in me to keep going. And I did. I always did, even when no one else gave a damn. You know, it's funny how rejection hits different when it comes from someone who used to look up to you. When Jessica and I were kids, I was the golden one. Not just to her, but to everyone. I was the kid who fixed the neighbor's VCR, who won the regional science fair with a self-watering plant system I built out of junkyard parts, the one who programmed a simple snake game on a busted school computer and got detention for skipping lunch to tweak the code. Mom used to beam when teachers called home. Dad, well, he was never really around enough to care either way, but still, it meant something. Jessica was always tagging along behind me back then, a little shadow with pigtails and wide eyes, asking a million questions about whatever I was building or breaking or trying to hack into. She'd sit on the floor next to me while I sorted through circuit boards and wires like I was some kind of magician. Back then, I was the one she bragged about. My brother can do anything, she told her friends. Hell, she even gave me the nickname Rocketman because she thought my gadgets would someday take me to space. And maybe I believed her. For a while, maybe I believed I could actually do something big. But life doesn't care about childhood promises or nicknames or how much potential you had when you were 15. Life cares about numbers in your bank account and job titles on LinkedIn and whether or not your family can brag about you at brunch. And somewhere along the way, the balance shifted. Jessica became the overachiever, the polished prodigy who got into NYU Law, who interned at a firm that ended up hiring her full-time before she even graduated, who never missed a birthday, never posted anything embarrassing, never failed in a way that anyone could see. I became the one who was still figuring it out, the one who brought homemade gifts to Christmas because money was tight, the one who sat at the kids' table even though I was pushing 40. That night, hunched over my laptop, I wasn't just debugging a server issue, I was trying to debug every bad decision I'd made in the past 10 years. Every job I turned down because I wanted to build something of my own. Every argument with my mother about stability. Every time I told myself, one day they'll understand. Because right now, it felt like no one ever would. There's something quietly humiliating about chasing a dream in your late 30s when everyone else around you is settling into real life, buying homes, raising kids, posting about Employee of the Month plaques, and 15-year work anniversaries. You start to question if maybe you missed a turn somewhere, if maybe you should have taken that consulting job in Chicago or said yes when Ben suggested launching together instead of going solo. But then, I remember what made me start this app in the first place. It wasn't about making $1 million overnight or proving anyone wrong. Not at first. It was about connection. Real connection. The kind of stuff social media forgot about when everything turned into filters and brand deals. I wanted to build something that actually made people talk to each other, that gave you something real to hold onto in a world where even a text message can feel like an obligation. I called it low-key because the idea was simple: no likes, no shares, no follower counts, just small moments between people who actually gave a damn. I knew it wasn't sexy. I knew it wasn't going to grab headlines like the next crypto gimmick or fitness tracker for your cat. But it felt honest. And I figured if I kept building it with enough heart, maybe it'd catch on. I guess what I didn't expect was how lonely it would feel building something that no one else saw value in, at least not yet. Have you ever been treated like you were invisible, just because your life didn't look like someone else's idea of success? Like your work only mattered if it came with a steady paycheck and a bullet point on a resume someone could understand? Because let me tell you, nothing cuts deeper than being told you don't matter, not by strangers, but by someone whose opinion used to mean the world. And maybe that's why I kept working long after midnight. Not to make the app better. Not even to fix the bug that was still crashing the settings page. But because quitting that night, after what she said, would have felt like proving her right. And I couldn't do that. Not yet. It started with a single buzz on my phone, just a short vibration at first, like the kind you ignore when you're deep in a flow state and you know it's probably some junk email or a notification from one of those newsletters you never unsubscribed from. I didn't even look up at first. My eyes were locked on a chunk of code that refused to behave, and I was right in that sweet spot where everything around you blurs and it's just you and the machine in a sort of rhythm, like a conversation without words. But then came another buzz, and then another, and within 30 seconds the phone was practically dancing off the edge of my desk like it was possessed. I leaned back, cracked my neck, and finally glanced at the screen. 3 missed calls from Ben. For text messages, all in caps. Then a 5th. Pick up. Holy shit. My gut twisted. I thought maybe something happened to his wife, or maybe one of our old clients came after us with a lawsuit over some expired code license. My head always goes to the worst possible place first. It's a gift. I answered the phone with a rushed, "What? What's going on?" And all I heard on the other end was laughter. Not the good kind, not light or relaxed, but the kind that borders on panic. "Dude," Ben said, breathless and wired, "are you on Twitter? Are you seeing this shit?" I told him no, I wasn't seeing anything. I was still trying to fix the damn backend, and that's when I noticed it. My browser had frozen. The console was spitting out error messages like a damn slot machine, and the app server had flatlined. My fingers froze above the keyboard as the realization sank in. The app had crashed. At first, I assumed it was my fault, some stupid syntax error I didn't catch, or a memory leak finally rearing its ugly head. But when I opened my analytics dashboard, usually a sleepy, quiet page that tracked a handful of users poking around, it was like walking into a riot. Sessions were off the charts. Thousands of active users, all pouring in at once, like someone had flipped a switch and opened the floodgates. My hands started shaking. No lie, I thought I might pass out. I asked Ben again what the hell was happening, and that's when he told me. "Some chick named Carly James," he said. "She posted a video using Low-Key Man. She's got like 3 million followers. She called it the only app that doesn't make her feel like shit about herself. It's blowing up. You're trending, Matt. You are trending." Carly James. I didn't even know the name at first, but when I looked her up, there she was, some influencer type, early 30s maybe, piercing eyes, sharp humor, and just enough chaos in her content to make her feel real. And sure enough, she had posted a video earlier that night. It was a casual, rambling monologue filmed in bed with her dog licking her face while she talked about deleting all the big platforms and trying out this weird little app that doesn't ask me to perform. She even held up her phone and showed the Low-Key logo, my logo, right there on screen for the world to see. "I don't even know who made this," she said, "but thank you, random app dude. This is what I needed. Thank you, random app dude." Jesus Christ. That was the moment. Right there. Not some investor pitch, not a TED Talk, not a conference with lanyards and startup bros clapping at buzzwords. Just a tired woman, lying in bed, telling her audience she liked what I built. And somehow, that meant everything. Because it wasn't polished. It wasn't a PR campaign or a launch strategy. It was real. That one video, less than 60 seconds long, was all it took to go from maybe 10 users a day to over 50,000 in under 2 hours. And then the emails started. Investors, journalists, old coworkers I hadn't talked to in years, college classmates I didn't even like. Even my ex-girlfriend, who I hadn't heard from since we broke up in a coffee shop on her lunch break 3 years ago, messaged me to say she always knew I'd make something cool. I didn't know whether to laugh or throw my phone out the window. I stayed up all night, sweating through my t-shirt, trying to stabilize the servers, answering frantic DMs from strangers asking for invites, for interviews, for partnership opportunities. My inbox went from 5 unread messages to over 200 in a single hour. I was tired, hungry, borderline delirious, but I couldn't stop smiling. Around 3 in the morning, I finally stood up from my desk and walked to the window. The city outside was dead quiet, just the hum of streetlights and the occasional screech of some drunk guy screaming into the void. But in that moment, everything felt louder. My whole world had cracked open while everyone else slept. It felt like standing on the edge of something huge and terrifying. I poured myself a drink, whiskey, no ice, and just sat there, staring into the glow of my computer screen, wondering what the hell came next. Part of me wanted to call Jessica right then and there. Not to rub it in, not really. Just to say, see? I wasn't crazy. But I didn't. Not yet. Because something in my gut told me this was only the beginning. And success, especially sudden success, doesn't come free. Not in this family. Not in this world. And sure as hell not for me. I always thought that if this day ever came, the day my app actually broke through the noise, the day I stopped being a punchline at family gatherings or the guy who just does freelance stuff, I'd feel unstoppable, like I'd finally be seen for who I really was. Not the dropout from a string of day jobs, not the dreamer who never grew up, but a builder, a creator, someone who made something out of nothing and shoved it into the world without permission. But sitting there on the same sagging couch I'd had since college, watching my phone light up like a damn slot machine, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hunted. The first call came from Mom, of course, because she was always first when it came to family drama or anything that smelled like success. I ignored it at first. I figured she probably hadn't seen the news yet and was just calling to ask if I wanted leftovers from Jessica's dinner, a question I didn't need thrown in my face at 4 in the morning. But when she called again 10 minutes later, and then texted, "Call me ASAP," I gave in and picked up, bracing for the inevitable guilt trip about missing the party. "Oh my God, Maddie," she said before I could even say hello, and immediately I knew she'd seen something. "Are you okay?" "I saw that girl. What's her name?" "Carly something. She posted about your app. Everyone's talking about it. You're on the internet, honey." Her voice was bright, frantic, over-sugared like the way she used to talk when Jessica got honors in high school, and it was jarring to hear it directed at me. "I'm okay, Mom," I said, rubbing my temples, trying to keep my voice level. "Just been up all night keeping things from crashing. The server's getting hit hard." She didn't hear a word after "I'm okay." She just kept going, telling me she always knew I'd make something of myself, that maybe now Uncle Vic would stop saying I wasted my education, that maybe now people would finally understand how smart my son is. I wanted to tell her that I hadn't slept in 20 hours, that the servers were still buckling under the load, that I hadn't even had time to figure out if this thing was going to last more than a week. But I didn't. I just let her talk, and talk, and talk, and I said yeah, or thanks, or we'll see whenever there was a long enough pause. She meant well. I know she did. But there was something about the sudden pride in her voice, the instant shift from worry to worship, that scraped against something raw inside me. Because where was this version of her last year when I was eating canned soup 4 nights a week and skipping birthdays to meet deadlines for a client who ghosted me? Where was she when Jessica called me between gigs in front of her friends and they all laughed like it was cute that I was still chasing the Silicon Valley pipe dream? And right on cue, the next call came through. Uncle Vic. I almost laughed. That man hadn't called me since 2018 when he needed help setting up a new iPad and ended up yelling at me because it wouldn't connect to his garage Wi-Fi. I let it ring. I let it go to voicemail. He called again 5 minutes later. Then texted, "Hey sport. Big congrats. Let's catch up. Got an idea for you." Of course he had an idea. Vic always had an idea. Usually something that sounded like a pyramid scheme dressed up as an investment opportunity. The man could smell money like a bloodhound, even if it was just the possibility of it. He once tried to talk Jessica into co-signing a lease for a vape shop he never opened. Now he wanted to catch up. Now I was worth calling. But the message that really made me pause came from Jessica. No call. Just a text. Just 4 words. "We need to talk." No punctuation. No emoji. No congrats or "I'm proud of you." Just a flat, neutral sentence that hit like a brick through a windshield. I stared at it for a long time, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the reply button but not moving. She hadn't spoken to me since she kicked me off the guest list like I was an inconvenience, like I didn't belong with the adults. And now she wanted to talk. I didn't know what she wanted. Maybe to apologize. Maybe to congratulate me. Maybe to ask for something. And maybe, just maybe, to stake a claim on something she suddenly realized had value. I didn't respond. Not yet. I told myself I needed to focus on the app, on stabilizing things, on prepping for whatever flood of media and investor crap was coming next. But really, I was afraid. Afraid of what her voice might sound like. Afraid of what mine might do in response. The app was still blowing up, by the way. More users than I could keep track of. People tweeting about it. Influencers tagging it. Blogs calling it the anti-Facebook. I got an email from a VC firm out of San Francisco asking if I was looking for funding. I was trending. People were talking. I was somebody now. And yet, with every new ping on my phone, every congratulatory email, every attempt to circle back from some guy who used to ignore my pitches, I felt a little more sick to my stomach. Because now that they saw me, now that they knew my name, they all wanted something. They wanted a piece. They wanted to be part of the story now that it had a headline. But where the hell were they when it was just me and my busted laptop and dreams nobody cared about? I had always thought success would silence the doubt, that it would burn away the resentment like sunlight through fog. But that night, as I sat in a room full of glowing screens and ringing devices and messages from people who used to treat me like a footnote, I realized something awful. It doesn't. It just gives you a louder room to sit in while you wonder who actually gives a damn. And who's just here for the spotlight. I didn't sleep. I didn't respond. I just stared at the ceiling and waited for the next message, because I knew they were coming. And I wasn't sure who I was anymore in the story they were all suddenly desperate to be part of. There's a strange kind of loneliness that creeps in when everyone suddenly wants a piece of you, when your name starts floating around rooms you've never entered and emails come with subject lines like urgent partnership opportunity or possible feature for tech spotlight, as if success somehow carved you out of who you were and packaged you into something people can monetize, borrow from, or latch onto without ever having known the version of you who built it all in the dark. I hadn't slept properly in 2 days. My inbox looked like it had been shotgunned, and my calendar was packed with back-to-back Zoom calls with suits who used words like synergy and scaling strategy, but didn't seem to understand the first thing about why I built low-key in the first place. I'd always told myself that if I ever got to this point, the point where people finally gave a damn, I wouldn't change, wouldn't sell out, wouldn't turn into another tech bro with buzzwords and a podcast and a Patagonia vest pretending to save the world with an app that does the same shit a group chat already does. But there I was, sitting in front of a webcam, nodding along while some investor from Palo Alto told me that if I restructured the app to include monetized tiers and a share-to-earn referral model, I could be looking at 8 figures by Q3. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shut the laptop and walk out the door and scream at the sky that not everything needs to be a goddamn pipeline to profit. But I didn't. I sat there, drinking the terrible coffee I'd brewed 3 hours ago, pretending I was still in control of the thing I created, while strangers in expensive offices dissected it like it was a carcass they could repurpose into something shinier. Ben wasn't helping, either. At first, he was thrilled. Called me 3 times in one morning just to yell about how we finally made it, even though he wasn't actually involved in the app's development. We drifted over the past year, not from malice, just different paths and priorities. But now that the app was exploding, he wanted back in. He started dropping hints, subtle at first, then not so much, about how he always believed in the vision, how he'd love to get in on the ground floor of any funding round, and how he had a few contacts who could really blow this thing up. When I didn't respond right away, the shift came fast. Suddenly he was colder, more passive-aggressive, throwing in lines like, "Guess some of us had to get there the hard way," or "must be nice to skip the grind." I didn't have the energy to argue. But it stung, because Ben had been there in the early days. He was one of the only people who ever told me I wasn't wasting my time. And now it felt like I owed him something I didn't have the capacity to give. And then came Jessica. She waited a couple days after the "we need to talk" text, probably watching the headlines and the download numbers like a hawk. When she finally reached out again, it was through Mom. Of course it was, asking if we could all sit down for lunch, just the 3 of us, like old times. I should have known better. I should have said no. But Mom sounded so hopeful, so sure that this was some beautiful reconciliation moment where her kids would come together and celebrate each other like a goddamn Hallmark movie. We met at that Italian place Jessica liked downtown, the kind of spot with cloth napkins and $22 salads and wine lists longer than a short novel. She walked in wearing a coat that probably cost more than my rent and gave me that same corporate smile she wore in every social media photo, like she was always posing, always performing, even when no one was watching. "Matt," she said, pulling me into an awkward side hug, "I'm really happy for you." Her voice was soft, careful, the way people talk when they're trying not to spook a wild animal. I didn't say much, just nodded, smiled, thanked her. I was too tired to dig into the layers of meaning in her tone, too worn down to rehash what she'd said to me the night of her birthday. But Mom, ever the optimist, jumped in like a referee who thought the match was already over. "Isn't it wonderful?" she beamed. "Both of my kids doing amazing things. Jessica with her firm, and Matt with his app, finally getting the recognition he deserves." Jessica's smile faltered just slightly, like the word finally hit a nerve. And then, just as I expected, she pivoted. Started asking questions, innocently at first, how I was handling the attention, if I had legal counsel, if I needed help managing contracts or structuring equity. "You know I do this kind of thing every day," she said, buttering a roll like she wasn't dissecting my life at the same time. "It'd be a shame if you got taken advantage of now." I stared at her for a long second, trying to read between the lines, trying to figure out if she actually meant it, if there was a real offer under the performance. And then she said it. "I just think maybe it's time we did something together. As a family. I mean, we could partner on this. I could handle the business side, you handle the tech. Like co-founders." Co-founders. She said it so casually, like she hadn't spent the past 5 years treating me like an embarrassment. Like she hadn't told me, to my face, that I wasn't invited to dinner because I didn't have a real job. Now she wanted to be part of it. Now she wanted in. I looked at her, then at Mom, who was already nodding along like it was a done deal, and I felt something inside me shrivel just a little. Not anger, not quite. Just a deep, cold exhaustion. Like I'd been walking uphill for years only to find the top of the mountain crowded with people who never believed in the climb. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just said I'd think about it. Because at that moment, I wasn't sure what the right thing was anymore. I wasn't sure if shutting her out would make me the villain, or if letting her in would make me a fraud. And that, more than anything, scared the hell out of me. It started, like most of the worst nights in my life, with good intentions and too many moving parts one didn't see coming. Mom called it a celebration dinner, her voice high with excitement, practically bouncing through the phone as she explained how she'd already made the reservations and invited just close family, nothing overwhelming, just a chance to honor you properly. I should have known right then to run the other way, but the way she said it, so proud, so hopeful, made it hard to say no, even though my gut was already tying itself in knots. I figured maybe I owed her one small night after all the years she spent trying to explain me to relatives who stopped asking what I was doing because the answers made them uncomfortable. She said it would be low-key, no speeches, just a few people and some food. But when I walked into the restaurant, a quiet little place with dim lighting and old Sinatra playing over hidden speakers, I saw a long table set for at least 14 people and immediately knew I'd been set up. My name was on the little menu cards. The centerpiece spelled out, "Congratulations, Matt," in gold script. And at the head of the table sat Jessica, already sipping wine with that look she always wore when she'd just finished winning something and was trying to pretend it didn't matter to her. I walked in like a guy showing up to his own wake, trying to keep my smile from slipping while I was smothered in hugs from cousins I hadn't seen since our grandmother's funeral. Uncle Vic slapped my back like he'd never ghosted me over a $200 loan, telling me how proud he was and how he always knew you'd figure it out eventually. His breath smelled like whiskey and cheap cologne, and I swear he was already 3 drinks in. My mother, beaming like she'd raised Steve Jobs herself, pulled me aside and whispered, "Just smile tonight, sweetheart. This is your moment." But it didn't feel like my moment. It felt like a trap. Jessica stood up to clink her glass about 10 minutes into the first round of drinks. I could already feel the tension knotting in my jaw when she cleared her throat and said, "I just want to say how proud I am of my brother, who's finally getting the recognition he deserves." That finally hit like a knife in the ribs. "We might have taken different paths," she continued, "but I think it's safe to say we've both landed exactly where we belong." There was applause, laughter, even a toast from one of our aunts, and I nodded like I appreciated it all, but inside, I felt like I was shrinking. Every word had weight, and none of it felt like celebration. It felt like comparison. It felt like branding. Like Jessica was using this dinner as a platform to remind the room she was still the golden child, generous enough to share the spotlight, but only if she was standing slightly taller in it. The food came out in courses, but I barely touched mine. I was too busy fielding questions from people who suddenly cared about tech. "So how do you plan to monetize? Is Meta looking to acquire? Do you need legal representation? Because I know a guy." It was like every single person at that table had already decided I was a company, not a person. Even my mother kept asking if I'd thought about writing a book or maybe doing a TED Talk, like she couldn't bear to let the moment pass without turning it into something bigger, shinier, louder. Then came the pitch. Jessica waited until dessert, naturally, after the wine had done its job and everyone was feeling warm and comfortable and a little too relaxed. She stood up again, didn't even ask for the floor this time, just launched right in with, "So I've been thinking, Matt, and I could really do something powerful together. We've talked a little about it, but I think now's the time to go public." The table quieted like someone had cut the music. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth, while she continued. "I've offered to help handle the legal and business side of things for low-key," she said, "and I think, honestly, a joint partnership would be the smartest move. He's the brains, I'm the structure. It just makes sense." I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. The room felt like it had dropped 5 degrees. Everyone turned to look at me like I was supposed to smile and nod and shake her hand right there over tiramisu. And that's when I did something I hadn't planned. I laughed. It wasn't a big laugh, not theatrical, not angry, Just this low, involuntary sound that came out of me before I could stop it. Jessica's face tightened immediately, her smile freezing into something that looked more like a mask. "What's funny?" she asked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I looked around the table and said, "Just the timing, Jess. 2 weeks ago, I didn't have a real job. Remember that?" I tried to keep my tone light, but the edge was there, and I knew everyone could hear it. "And now we're co-founders?" She didn't blink. "That was a misunderstanding," she said. "I was trying to keep things intimate. You know that." "No," I said, leaning forward now, my voice quiet but steady. "I think I know exactly what it was." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "And then right there in front of everybody," she exploded. "You always do this," she snapped, her voice cracking just enough to make everyone shift uncomfortably in their seats. "You act like the victim, like no one ever supported you, but maybe we were just tired of pretending your side projects mattered." The silence that followed was so thick it felt like it might choke me. Mom tried to intervene, but I stood up, slowly, carefully placing my napkin on the table. "Thanks for dinner," I said. "But I'm not selling pieces of myself just to make this easier for everyone else to swallow." And then I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't throw a drink. I didn't look back. But in that moment, I realized something that I'd been afraid to admit until now. Sometimes success doesn't change who you are. It just shows you who never really saw you in the first place. 2 days passed after the dinner, and in that space between silence and aftermath, I kept expecting the storm to hit. I thought maybe Jessica would call to apologize or double down or somehow justify her little outburst in front of the whole damn family, but instead there was nothing. Not a word. Not a text. Not even a passive-aggressive meme in the group chat about sensitive people with inflated egos. Just quiet. The kind that isn't peace, just a lull before something complicated. I spent most of that time doing what I always do when life feels like it's pressing down from all sides. I buried myself in work. Meetings. Code. Server loads. Feature requests. User feedback. Interviews with tech blogs that wanted to know the emotional origin story of low-key, like it was some phoenix rising from ashes instead of a glorified side project born out of loneliness, frustration, and one too many nights staring at blank message threads. Every hour was packed. My calendar looked like a war zone of Google Invites, but I didn't mind. I preferred the chaos of work over the chaos of feeling. Then, on a Wednesday morning when I'd finally carved out 2 hours to eat something that wasn't microwaved and walk around the block like a human being, I got the email. No subject line, just a single line in the body. "We should talk." No drama this time, I promise. It was from Jessica, of course, and despite everything in me screaming that I should delete it and keep my blood pressure under control, I replied. 3 words. "Name a time." She chose a neutral space, some generic coffee shop near Midtown that had enough noise to mask tension and enough foot traffic to prevent a scene. When I got there, she was already sitting with her laptop open and her expression carefully set to professional, which, if you know her, is not all that different from predatory. She stood up, smiled in that perfectly pleasant way she does, and gestured for me to sit. We exchanged a few pointless pleasantries, how mom was, how business was, how the world seemed to spin faster now that low-key had hit some kind of nerve with the burned-out digital crowd. But the real purpose of the meeting arrived about 3 sips into my coffee. "I want in," she said, her tone smooth, rehearsed, completely free of shame or irony. "Look, I know we got off on the wrong foot. The dinner wasn't my finest moment. But I mean what I said. I think we could build something really powerful together." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, but she wasn't smiling. She was dead serious. "You've got the product, Matt," she continued, leaning in now like we were co-conspirators. "You built something people love. But if you want to scale, grow, sustain this long-term, you need help. Legal, strategic partnerships, distribution deals, exit planning. You don't want to spend the next year babysitting investors and negotiating NDAs. I didn't respond. I let her keep going, let her unspool the pitch she'd clearly practiced. She had numbers, projections, case studies from other companies that missed their window because they didn't build the right team. She painted a picture where I wasn't alone anymore, where we were co-founders, equals, her with her legal acumen and my scrappy tech brain coming together to create something lasting. And part of me, some tired, overworked part of me, wanted to believe her. Because the truth was, I was drowning. Loki had gone from pet project to full-blown phenomenon in a week, and I hadn't even figured out a monetization model, let alone hired someone to help with the avalanche of user reports, infrastructure needs, and brand inquiries. My mornings started at 6 and ended whenever my eyes gave out. I hadn't seen a weekend since the app blew up. I was running on fumes and caffeine and a thin thread of validation that frayed a little more every day. But another part of me, the part that remembered being uninvited to her birthday dinner because I didn't have a real job, kept flashing red warning lights. Because this wasn't some friend offering help out of loyalty. This was a strategist making a move. Jessica never made decisions without 3 backup plans and an exit strategy. I need to think about it, I said, finally. You don't have long, she replied, not cruel, just honest. The window's small and the interest is growing. You'll need support, and you know it. You can't build an empire alone. She stood up, gathering her laptop like the deal was done, like she'd laid down the cards and now the rest was up to me. Let me know soon. And Matt, don't let your pride cost you something real. That line stuck with me long after she walked away. Don't let your pride cost you something real. It was the kind of line she probably practiced in the mirror, but damn if it didn't hit somewhere deep. Because yeah, maybe I was holding onto old wounds too tightly. Maybe I was letting past slights dictate future decisions. But wasn't she the one who made this personal? Who treated me like a joke until other people started clapping? I walked home that day with a headache that wouldn't quit and a choice that felt impossible. Do I bring her in, smooth things over, and maybe protect the app from collapse in the process? Or do I keep it mine, keep it pure, and risk burning out in a blaze of stubborn, lonely independence? There's no easy answer. No right choice written in the sky. Just this twisting ache in my gut, and the knowledge that whatever I decide, something will break. And I still haven't decided what I'm willing to lose. I woke up that morning with the decision still unmade, my mind a tangle of numbers, names, and noise that hadn't shut off in days, maybe weeks, maybe since the moment Carly posted that video and turned my life inside out with a single swipe. The air in my apartment felt stale and dry, like it had soaked up every ounce of tension and uncertainty I'd been breathing out since this all began. I hadn't answered Jessica's email, hadn't replied to Mom's text that said, "Don't let stubbornness ruin your future," hadn't even opened my investor call schedule for the day. My hands were too heavy, my thoughts too loud, and the choice looming in front of me felt like a cliff edge where both sides looked equally steep and equally unforgiving. I poured coffee that had long since gone from comfort to habit and stared at the wall like it owed me an answer, some kind of sign that would tell me what the hell I was supposed to do. Bring her in and maybe make things easier, more stable, more professional? Or keep her out and keep control, keep the story mine, keep the history from rewriting itself into a version where she was always in my corner? I kept thinking about what she said, about pride, about windows, about building something real. But what kept ringing louder than her carefully measured pitch was that night in the kitchen, the way she'd laughed while uninviting me, the ease in her voice when she told me I wasn't one of the real ones. And now, somehow, that same voice wanted equity, wanted partnership, wanted a piece of what she once dismissed. And yet, I couldn't deny that she had a point. The app was growing faster than I could keep up with, and the cracks were beginning to show. I'd patched infrastructure gaps at 2 in the morning, outsourced temporary help to freelancers I couldn't fully trust, turned down licensing inquiries because I didn't understand the legal language. I was one person trying to carry a rocket ship on my back, and sooner or later, something was going to snap. I walked out to the edge of the city, Not really thinking, just moving, winding through streets I used to know before everything went sideways. At some point, I ended up at a bench overlooking the East River, the water dark and swirling beneath a sky that looked too calm for how loud my head felt. I sat there for almost an hour, watching the waves hit the rocks, trying to picture a future where the app was more than just a fluke, more than a one-hit wonder riding a viral wave. And in every version of that future, the truth was hard to ignore. I couldn't do this alone. That's not the same as saying Jessica was the right person to help me. But it did mean I had to start thinking about what mattered more, the purity of the idea or the survival of the thing itself. Maybe they were the same once, but not anymore. Not with a million eyes watching, not with people depending on it, not with money on the table and legacy quietly knocking at the door. So I did what felt like the only honest thing I could do. I picked up the phone. I didn't call her. I emailed. 3 lines. Let's talk. I'm open to the idea, but I need to set the terms. That was it. No grand reconciliation. No dramatic forgiveness. Just an open door. She didn't reply right away, but I saw the read receipt almost immediately because of course she had that setting turned on. Jessica never left anything to chance. The next few days were a blur of lawyers, advisors, friendlies, and long late-night conversations with Ben, who finally came around enough to stop acting like I'd stolen something from him. We didn't finalize anything, nothing signed, nothing promised, but the wheels were turning. We started talking framework, involvement, roles. I insisted on boundaries. She pushed back on some. We found middle ground in others. It wasn't warm. It wasn't fuzzy. But it was real. And then something happened that I wasn't ready for. I woke up one morning, just like every other day lately, blinking into the blue glow of my screen, and saw it. A post. From Jessica. A photo of the two of us from the dinner I'd walked out of. God knows who had taken it or when, but there it was, her smiling, holding a glass of wine, my face half-turned like I didn't even know the picture was being taken. The caption underneath was just vague enough to keep it slippery. So proud to be building something that matters together. Hashtag co-founder energy. Hashtag family first. Hashtag Loki wins. No tag. No link. No quote from me. Just a photo and an implication. I stared at that post longer than I want to admit, scrolling through the comments as people assumed, as people celebrated, as people reposted, reshared, and made it fact. It didn't matter that no contract had been signed. It didn't matter that I hadn't agreed to co-found anything. All that mattered was perception. In her world, appearances were currency, and this post had just spent me like a blank check. I didn't comment. I didn't like it. I didn't even bring it up when we had our next call. I just tucked it away somewhere behind my ribs, next to the other little betrayals that didn't bleed enough to scream about but still left a mark. Because maybe that was the real cost of all this. Not just the work. Not just the exhaustion. But the knowing that no matter how much I build, no matter how far I go, the story will never be just mine again. There will always be someone trying to rewrite it, reshape it, share it, claim it. And maybe, just maybe, that's the price of being seen. Or maybe I just finally learned the difference between letting go and giving in. But I'll say this, when the spotlight finally swings your way, you better know who's standing beside you because they believed in the journey. And who's there just to be seen in the light.